So today we're taking a look at a PortalCraft deck. This one in particular is a Jack of all trades style deck, and that I found super interesting. You don't see a lot of Jack of all trades sort of decks floating around much anymore, but it is definitely one that piques the interest of a lot of players, I would say. So we are running the Omen package, the Machina package, along with a pretty decent mech package. So we're actually going with those three main styles, of course with artifacts supporting all of those, and doing a really nice job on that end. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this one and taking a look. So, kicking us off, we are going up against RuneCraft. RuneCraft seems to be an extremely popular deck in the current rotation meta, and it's no surprise as it is quite a solid one if you can play it well. I've been experimenting with a few different RuneCraft decks and all seem reasonably viable. It's just a matter of what you actually are after to play. So, we're starting off with an okay hand. I mean, some decent procs to start with. Should work out well. Even better when you can get the mechanization. It does let us put some cheap artifacts in our deck, which is typically what you want to aim for when you're playing this variation of deck. You really want those cheap artifacts most of the time. And I normally decide to forego my Aisha. My Aisha is kind of just an extra finisher. I tend to like to use her on 3 if I don't have another play, since she works pretty well for that. And she isn't the be-all end-all, especially when you're in a rune matchup. You don't plan on usually using her as your big finisher unless you absolutely have to. Now we can get a couple of Magic Steel Lions onto the board. Basically we're just flooding, that's kind of our intention now. Since we do have Displacer Bot to come out next turn if we want to.
This world was to be purged.
Fate's Hand, interesting. So definitely going for some very strong draw power, and we've even got the Bahamut on the next turn. That should be really good. Bahamut does a wonderful job in this deck, usually getting me some pretty epic wins when it works out. Of course it doesn't always work, it's just more often than not, I would say. And of course, Fiery Embrace, they're using all their really good clear abilities. They've got Solomon, which is even better for them. Really working out nicely. I've actually got plans for a couple of different rune decks. I think the next video I've got will actually be Prophetess Rune, with a similar package to most of the others. And then I want to try a Prince of Darkness variation, which they're all very similar, but they use different end games, which is quite interesting. So taking full advantage of this, we've actually got a very nice Indignant to go up on turn 8. We just need to get through turn 7, which is where Silver Beast really comes into play. Makes a wonderful turn 7 play most games. Otherwise, we've easily got the acceleration into Analyzing and Mech Gun, which is also an insanely good play. Since we're not required to really put anything else into it. But we do have to remove this, so unfortunately it is going to be Omen of Destruction. So it's really, I can't leave up a 7-7 and a 5-6. They're just too large, too difficult to handle, and not worth the hassle. My opponent's not really got anything else planned right this second by the looks of it. I mean, they just went for a couple of massive drops. They're about to lose the majority of this, or at least most of its stats, which is important. Even if I had to leave up Tetra, I'd much rather deal with a 5 than a, 7-7, so not the end of the world. Zealot of Truth was a little rough, but nothing we can't handle yet. Since we do have Indignant plus an Evo on it, we'll absolutely destroy. And with a second Indignant in hand, as long as we can keep a 1-drop up, we actually can just win the game. That's provided they, of course, put in enough resources to kill the 7-10. Playing Rio is nice and good, especially with their setup so far. I can definitely see why they'd want to play him. It's probably aiming for some removal, if I had to guess it. But obviously not finding that removal. Got to be a little disappointing when you don't find what you actually need to at least stay alive in the game, so that rounds that out. So we have another rune game next, this time against the Tornado of Terror herself. Great. A lot of people have been running around with those One Punch Man things since they are so fresh and new. To be honest, I think she's the only one I really like out of the all three set. Although Genos isn't bad, I actually don't mind him either. But I think Saitama as Dragon just, to me, always felt kind of off. I don't know what I would put him as either way. I think Dragon probably still is the best fit. I just don't think I enjoy the art style used and the layout for him. I don't know why. It's just, it feels so off. Even though I really do enjoy One Punch Man, I'm actually a huge fan. Really enjoying Season 2 as far as it goes and the manga, but I don't know why. Just the art felt off to me. On the bright side, we are starting this game fairly well. I mean, we've got a pretty decent early game set up already. We just need to kind of get it out and going. It would have been better if we had a decent turn 3 setup, but beggars can't be choosers every time. And it is getting hard to fight anything other than Rune lately. I mean, I'd say 7 out of 10 games are against Rune on ladder most of the time for me, so it does get hard to find some decent variation that aren't just usually a loss or not even worth showing because they're an instant concede sort of thing, so hopefully the matches will improve as the meta kind of shifts and settles. Although that was a relatively quick concede, it still rounded out pretty well. Once you kind of get the Omen out, it's really hard for Rune to kind of decide they want to keep going. So they were some of the better games overall for this deck, showing out the early game curve and what you can really do in the mid and late game once you do get things like Belf meta. Really, being a jack of all trades deck does mean it kind of is the master of none. You're not really particularly specializing in anything, you're kind of just trying to cover all bases, and that seems to work okay in this kind of early-ish stage of the current meta, but as things are getting more and more refined and players are getting more and more competent with the decks, I notice a pretty sharp decline in consistency for this deck, and that is a little disappointing. So if you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find the deck list in the description below. Until next time, guys, see ya.